Hey everyone, welcome. Happy Tuesday. We have a new series starting today for leaders out there, and that is leading change. One of the biggest tasks that leaders have is whether it's helping the organization grow, whether helping your team grow, whether it's implementing technologies, whether it's redesigning the organization, whether it's creating new products and services. Change is all around us, whether it's dealing with a pandemic and a virtual workforce, right? Change is all around us. And so I'm going to share some strategies for that, because 2020 has been full of a lot of change, right? From the economy and all the implications of that, to the pandemic that I mentioned, to the racial justice, to the political theater, political atmosphere, and in that regard, so there's a lot of change, a lot of pressures for change. And so how can you effectively it? And one of the top culprits of change not succeeding, by the way, it's pretty commonly noted that 70% of all change efforts fail. And one of the biggest culprits is that there's resistance to change, right? There's resistance, right? And so one of the reasons why there's so much resistance is because there's been a failure to get enough people on board, enough buy-in from key stakeholders. And so that's where I'm starting today. It's kind of fundamental. This is part of a 5-part series, and today I have 5 strategies for the first installment, and that's identifying your key stakeholders. I'm going to package this quite simply in the form of questions, but the key aspect of this is do not do this in isolation. Do not do this in isolation. I encourage you to build a team, because otherwise, in general, people experience it as kind of the ivory tower effect, right? They're more likely going to resist when it's just coming from above, right? That headquarters or that ivory tower, wherever that is, or the owner of the company or whatnot, that may or may not be in touch with kind of the ground level of what the impacts are going to be. And so what you don't want is people scratching their heads and saying, what the heck were they thinking? What were they thinking? Why would a rational person even do something like this? Because they wouldn't, right? That's what's going on in their minds. So here are the strategies. So the first one is ask yourself, who's going to be directly impacted by the change? Who's going to be impacted the most? So if it's, for example, a change in the product or service, or if it's a new product or service that's needed in the market, maybe it's the customers will be the most impacted, right? Well, maybe it'll be the customers. It could be operations, who knows? So identify who's going to be directly impacted the most. Not just by the end state, but to bring the change about, right? And that's going to lead into some of my other questions. And that is, who's going to be most indirectly impacted by the change? So maybe directly it's going to be customers. Like, for example, maybe you're going to make some improvements to some software, like a software upgrade, right? Or a new iOS update or something like that. So one of the key things is to really identify indirectly. Well, that usually means who needs to help make the change happen. That's usually going to be support staff or operations, or could be technical staff, all kinds of people that will be impacted there. How will customers be impacted? Well, going back to the first one, by the price, by the alternatives available, by just the solution, how well it addresses their problem. For indirect impacts, how will that affect your operational support staff? Well, maybe they've got multiple projects and their bandwidth is limited. And so they really don't have the time to roll out yet another change. Okay? Maybe it's going to be employees that need to work with a new technology and they don't have the resources to educate customers on the change. Maybe they'll be impacted a lot because they'll be dealing with it. Maybe it's the call centers, right, who are going to be the recipients of all the angry calls that come in with frustrated customers when something doesn't work as it should or whatnot. So identify that. The third is how is the change going to be funded? Like, where's the money coming from? Typically there's money, or typically there's some type of authorization or sponsorship for that. So how will it be funded? Usually it's an executive of some sort, executive sponsor of some sort. So it's really important for them to be included in the process in some fashion. So when you identify these people, and I mean, names of people, as well as maybe classifications of people or groups, right? So identify these up front. The fourth strategy is who could serve as champions of this change. So remember I said, don't do this in isolation. Who can help you, right? Who can evangelize this change? And really, who are the people that, and I'm going to talk about this in the next installment next week about influencing change, but who are these people that, maybe naturally are either early adopters or two, can really just amplify your message and are respected by others, right? And would want to do this, right? There's something positive in it for them to do it, whether it improves their status, whether it helps them become more visible within the organization, whether it makes them feel good to represent. So identify who could serve as champions so that you can have a network of champions. So for example, I had a client earlier today who for the last few months has been working on helping the organization, a very large organization, very well-known organization, migrate from using spreadsheets to Microsoft Teams, right? Taking something that's kind of more of an onerous exercise as kind of a team effort to keep track of different projects and whatnot, and these competing priorities, to more of a Teams environment where it's Microsoft Teams, which is has some collaboration tools and some ways to really help facilitate that. So there's kind of a change in this case. So something that he did very well was start reaching to people who might seem to be competitors in some sense, but actually talk with them, really bring people together and get them aligned, and supporting things as well, and getting people who can attest to it, people who have tried it already and say, hey, it's great. So there's all types of individuals within your organization and maybe even outside the organization who could serve as champions and support your effort. The fifth strategy is who benefits, right? Ask yourself, who benefits the most from this change? Who's going to benefit the most from this change? Big picture. It may be customers, or maybe it's shareholders. If you're a public company, because maybe it's going to be potentially very profitable and shareholders will benefit. It could be others, could be just a certain employee population, depending on what changes we're talking about. If we're changing the benefits, the employee benefits, right? That's a hot potato. That could be something, is it perceived, or they're perceived takeaways, or is it perceived as an enrichment and benefit, additional benefits for that change? So identify who ultimately benefits the most from the change? Maybe it's you personally, because it's going to be less on your plate in the end. It's good to have an honest assessment of that. So those are the 5 questions that I would suggest you ask yourself. Who's going to be most directly affected? Who's going to be indirectly affected? How will the change be? Who could serve as champions? And last, who benefits the most? If you do these things, I think you're going to be a good chunk of the way there in terms of minimizing the potential resistance to change from the outset and maximizing the potential for success. There's certainly a lot that has to be done between, the starting point and the ending point for it to be successful, right? It's not enough just to identify the stakeholders. That is a start. That is a start. And in this series, I won't be covering like every single element, right? There's a lot of elements like having a compelling reason for the change and things like that. We'll talk about some of that with influence next week. The key thing is if you get some of the fundamentals, then you can work out some of the other things and increase that percentage quite a bit of having success. So thank you for watching. And next week, tune in, and we'll be talking about influencing change. Same time, 5 o'clock Pacific time. And this Friday, we will be having, I'm sorry, not next week because it's Thanksgiving week. We'll be going dark that week. It'll be 2 weeks, 2 Tuesdays from now. And then this Friday, we'll be having a High Five Friday. And you can ask whatever questions you have. We'll talk about some current events as it relates to the workplace. So drop in, and that's more of a conversation. So thank you all for watching. If this was helpful, please share this with your LinkedIn connections, with your Facebook friends, right? You can share it. It'll be on YouTube as well. So you can share that there. So thank you all. Take care. Bye-bye.